Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So a couple of days ago, I made a video talking about the 2019 draft and more particularly the top 10 of that draft and how outside of Jack Hughes and Moritz Seider, it is looking very underwhelming, especially with guys like Trevor Zegras and Dylan Cousins looking like they were going to be studs, exceeding their draft position, but kind of regressing the last couple of years. But you guys seem to really like that video. Thank you guys for engaging with it. And a lot of you guys commented on that video saying, if you think 2019 is bad, you got to look at 2012. I want a 2012 video. And of course, the 2012 draft is horrendous. So I thought we'd make a video on it, talking about the top 10, and at the end I'll run over the entire draft, because this top 4 without a doubt is the worst in NHL history. The top 10 is pretty damn underwhelming. There's like 2 good players, and even them, I'm not sure if they've reached their overall draft selection overall. 2 other decent NHL players that kind of fell off, but we have like 6 busts in this draft. We're going to dive into it. We're going to talk about it. And up first, at first overall, we got Nail Yakupov. And again, he definitely busted. We'll talk about why. But at the time, he was viewed as a genuinely game-breaking talent. He was looked at as the no doubt best prospect since Alexander Ovechkin. Wasn't expected to be Alexander Ovechkin, but you thought with Nail Yakupov, you could have a 40-goal, 85 to 90-point guy. And again, this was 2012, back when goal scoring had not risen to rates that it had sat. Now, that's basically the equivalent of like 45 goals, 55 assists. Like he was expected to be a top 20 player in the entire NHL. He had that overall offensive talent. And in his first year after getting drafted, he was kind of living up to the billing. Before the lockout season, he played in the KHL. He had 10 goals, 8 assists, 18 points in 22 games in 2012-2013. Then comes over for the lockout season, 17 goals, 14 assists, 31 points in 48 games. He led the Edmonton Oilers in goals as a rookie. It was a bad Oilers team, don't get me wrong, but it was still very impressive, looking like he was trending still in the right direction. However, sophomore season, only 11 goals, 13 assists, 24 points in 63 games. People aren't whipping out the pitchforks yet. It's still young. The team still stinks, so people aren't too worried, but it's definitely a sophomore slump from Nail Yakupov. The third season, though, reality kind of starts to kick in. He only has 14 goals, 19 assists for 33 points in 81 games. He is far underperforming the last 2 seasons now compared to that rookie season. And in the next year, he also was just more of the same, only had 23 points in that season. He ends up getting traded. They give up, because now they have Connor McDavid, so they can do that, as well as Leon Draisaitl. They give him up for only a third-round pick to the St. Louis Blues, where he only has 9 points in 40 games the season after that, 16 points in 56 games the season after with the Colorado Avalanche. And then he's out of the NHL. Nail Yakupov is gone in the NHL after just 5 or 6 NHL seasons. It is very underwhelming. And with Nail Yakupov, it really comes down to hockey IQ and hockey sense. He still had the tools. He was never able to find the toolkit to kind of put that all together. He was always rushed, running all over the place, not sure what to do with the puck, making the wrong decisions. And when looking at a report that I found from Ryan Rashog when it came to Nail Yakupov's development, it definitely falls on the team a decent amount as well. But Yakupov was willing to put in the hard work, but he was only willing to do it in the areas that he was already good at or things that he enjoyed to do. He spends a bulk of his time working on his shot, especially his one-timer, even though shooting the puck is already one of the things he can do. So when looking at Nail Yakupov, hockey IQ didn't develop, and it's to overall round out his game, he wasn't able to do the things. So when his offensive playmaking didn't pan out because of that hockey IQ, he was a defensive black hole. He didn't give a shit about defense, and that's kind of the reason why Russian wingers get labeled as just lazy at times. I remember Ivan Demidov in the draft process, they called him lazy. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's not lazy at all. You're just saying that because he's Russian. But yeah, he gave Russian wingers a bad rap for a very long time that has kind of still carried on. So the overall offense never developed, and when you're Nail Yakupov and you have no defensive game and don't really care about the defensive game, that's how you find yourself out of the league in 5 to 6 years. Other players we've seen kind of bust, but have found very good middle 6 roles in the NHL because they find other things to do. Nail Yakupov was never willing to do that. That's the reason why he's been playing in the KHL the last couple of years, and he's actually been pretty productive. But again, that's the KHL. He is one of the biggest draft busts ever, point blank, period. At second overall, Ryan Murray went to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was expected to be kind of a franchise defenseman, not on the same level as Nail Yakupov, but was a safe top 4 prospect in this class. Just did everything at a very high level, had the look, had the build of a two-way guy that could be a 45 to 50 point number 1 defenseman at the NHL level. And for Columbus, this was a big pick. Rick Nash had left the team that summer. Ryan Murray was looked at to be eventually the face of this franchise. He ended up going back to the WHL after getting drafted, did not debut immediately. Unfortunately, he got hurt, only played 23 games in his draft year plus one, which we're going to talk about more in depth. The injuries will keep on happening and will keep on hurting him. His first year in the NHL, though, 21 points in 66 games, playing 20 minutes a night, playing a lot on the penalty kill. Decently impressive for a guy that's just 20 years old. Very solid both ways of the ice. However, in that 2014-2015 season, injuries come back in a big way. He plays 4 games to start the year, then hurts his knee, misses 44 games, comes back for 3 games, high ankle sprain, misses more games, only plays 5 games the rest of the way. At 21 years old, basically a full wasted year of development where he only plays 12 games. However, the following season, he comes back in a big way. Only 25 points, but plays 22-51 a night for Columbus at 22 years old. Looked like as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to develop. He's going to at least be a very good top pair. Just stay healthy. Just stay healthy for the love of God. But after that, they bring in Seth Jones. They bring in Zach Werenski, and he does deal with injuries. Only has 23 points in 104 games the next 2 seasons, playing 18 minutes a night. So now he's getting replaced. He's not able to stay healthy. Does bounce back in 2018-2019 with 29 points in 56 games, playing 21 minutes a night, and the Columbus Blue Jackets end up beating Tampa Bay in the first round in the playoffs there. But that's really the last decent season of his career. Ends up playing just 125 out of the 290 games that he potentially could from 2019 to 2023 because of injuries, because of a chronic back injury that continues. And as a result, his career is over after the 2023 season. In Columbus, he only played 358 out of the 589 regular season and playoff games due to his various injuries. You thought at first that one season when it was a knee injury, ankle sprain, you thought it was just fluky. But after once, especially when it became chronic back injuries, he was never able to recover. And as a result, during his tenure with the Columbus Blue Jackets, he only played around 65% of the games that he was eligible to play and missed so many key development years that Ryan Murray never really panned out. If he was fully healthy, I don't know if he ever turns into a legit number 1 and meets the expectations at second overall, but I think we can agree at the bare minimum, considering what he was doing at 20 years old, then 22 when he was actually healthy, he probably would have at the bare minimum been a very good second pair guy, probably a solid first pair. But as a result, Columbus, their second overall pick, does not become the face of their franchise, and they struggle greatly over the next decade or so and still struggle. At third overall, Montreal selects Alex Galchenyuk. He's looked at as a big, strong center that could be that franchise center for the Montreal Canadiens, especially with Max Pacioretty. Carey Price needed another elite forward to kind of keep this team highly competitive and go on the deep runs that we thought that they were maybe capable of doing. And fun fact, Galchenyuk's actually fully American. A lot of people think that he's Russian or Belarusian because of that last name. His father actually came over from Belarus to play pro hockey, but he was born in America, raised in America, fully American. But after he was drafted, he goes back to the CHL, has 61 points in 33 games during the lockout season, comes over once the lockout season starts, and has 27 points in 48 games. You're thinking at 19 years old, this guy is looking like a future franchise center. We're going to be loaded in Montreal. We're going to go on a couple deep runs with this guy as our star. The next couple years, it's okay. 31 points in 65 games the following season, but he's still pretty young. Year 3 was more the same. However, in 2016, he fully breaks out with the 30-goal season, which was tied in the NHL for 19th. Again, it was a lower scoring NHL back in 2016. But yeah, 22 years old. He's 19th in the entire NHL in goals, and he's not even playing on the same line that season with Pacioretty and Plekanec. Guy's looking like a stud. Next year, 44 points in 61 games. Not goal scoring the same, but still very strong. Then just doesn't really have that good of a next season with 51 points in around 80 games. And at 24 years old, they decide to ship him to Arizona for another guy that was struggling. That was a former high pick in Max Domi. He has 1 season in Arizona with 41 points, then goes from Pittsburgh to Minnesota to Ottawa to Toronto, back to Arizona to Colorado, putting up 58 points in 164 games. Looked like he virtually fell off a cliff. And in the summer of 2023, we got a reason as to why that was. He got arrested in the Arizona area after re-signing with them, or not re-signing, after signing with them that offseason. Gets arrested after running into something, and you can look up the cop video, the cop footage of him in the back of that police car yelling obscenities at that cop. Clearly was under the influence of something, and there was clear substance problems with Alex Galchenyuk. In fact, in 2017, a former Canadiens coach actually heard a rumor that he had been to rehab a couple of times. So it's clear that it was more so off the ice than on the ice with Alex Galchenyuk. Unfortunately, he's been playing in Russia the last couple seasons and playing pretty well, but I just hope that he's clean and sober. It's clear that at some time, I'm not going to speculate when, but I could probably assume after 2016 or something like that, that something happened with off the ice stuff, addictions, horrible stuff. Hope he's doing well. But yeah, with him compared to Nail Yakupov, when it was more so the on ice development, Ryan Murray, the injuries, unfortunately, off the ice activities kind of derailed Alex Galchenyuk. And as a result, he was never able to find his groove yet again in the NHL. At fourth overall, my New York Islanders selected Griffin Reinhart. He was that big 6'4" defenseman, more so defensively, but still had very solid offensive tools where you thought he could be a 40-ish point top pair guy. Locked down defensively, what was just viewed as a pro-ready prospect that could come in relatively soon. However, the next 2 years in the WHL showed no offensive growth in the WHL. In fact, regressed on a point per game basis, even like 13, 14-year-old me was like, why isn't this guy developing? I don't like this one bit. We should trade him. Not, I didn't say that, but we do end up trading him after his one season in the AHL. He got 8 NHL games, didn't really do much. But they end up trading him at the 2015 draft. They trade him for the 16th overall pick and the 33rd overall pick to the Edmonton Oilers, where the Edmonton Oilers end up getting Matt Barzal. And like immediately after that was guys like Kyle Connor, Thomas Chabot, Joel Eriksson-Ek, Brock Besser, Travis Konecny. You get the idea. Jack Roslovic as well, not on the same level as those guys, but you get the idea. Edmonton should have kept that pick, as well as the Islanders trading up from 33rd overall to 28th or 29th, selecting Anthony Beauvillier. That deal, obviously amazing for New York Islanders. That's why I remember the Griffin Reinhart pick fondly, if anything, considering it got us Matt Barzal. But yeah, Griffin Reinhart did not work for the Edmonton Oilers. Got some burn the following season, 29 games at the NHL level, only playing around 18 minutes a night. Didn't play good, played in the AHL the next 3 years, then played some years in the Euro League, and he hung up the skates in 2022. When looking at Griffin Reinhart, why it didn't work for him, he just wasn't that good of a skater, really, ever. At 6'4", you didn't expect him to be some amazing skater, but he did not develop to the modern game. If this guy was drafted in 1992 instead of 2012, probably could have been a decent lockdown top pair or second pair defenseman, but the game was just too fast for him, and especially when his offensive tools did not translate. So he was mediocre to bad defensively and could not virtually offer you anything offensively. It just wasn't going to work, and especially he's one of those guys that hit puberty, physical maturity, I guess, really early, because he was able to toss people around in the WHL, and you thought this guy is a freak in nature. But once other guys caught up to him, and then once he got to the AHL, NHL, and guys were his size and stronger than him, he was not this net front presence that you expected him to be, this physical beast. He kind of just got absolutely exposed, and as a result, was one of the biggest busts of recent memory. But funny enough, the New York Islanders at 65th overall in this draft, they got Adam Pelech, who was basically like what they expected, and Griffin Reinhart still wouldn't be worth the 4th overall pick, but this draft wasn't all bad for my New York Islanders. At 5th overall, Morgan Riley goes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Our first good player, our first actually good player. And when looking at it, in his draft year, he tore his ACL, so he was a little bit of a question mark, but he did come back at the end of that season, was pretty strong. But yeah, Morgan Riley, as you can imagine, what his scouting report was: mobile, puck-moving defenseman. What was he at the NHL level? Mobile, puck-moving defenseman. Spent one more year in the WHL, but then came over to the NHL, and although he only played 17 minutes a night, was a good offensive defenseman, putting up 27 points. Would continue to develop decently the next 2 to 3 years, around half a point per game. In 2018, decently popped for 52 points. The following season, first year of John Tavares being in Toronto, he had 72 points, 20 goals at 24 years old. He was looking like one of the best U25 defensemen in the entire NHL. Finished 5th in Norris voting, which was the highest among young defensemen in the NHL. Looked like he was going to become a top 3, top 4 offensive defenseman in the NHL and a legit number 1. That obviously did not exactly happen. The following 2 seasons, 62 points in 102 games, still very productive. In 2022, got back on track, and you thought, oh, the COVID seasons were a fluke. He had 68 points, but the last 2 years, he's been around 56-point pace. This year, only 18 points in 34 games. He's a good top pair offense defenseman. He never was consistent enough offensively to really be that franchise offense defenseman. He needs a guy probably like a TJ Brody or Chris Tanev to play with in terms of being a lockdown, stay-at-home guy, but he cannot drive his own pair to being one of the best pairs in the entire NHL. He's just strictly a top pair offensive defenseman. Is it a bad pick at 5th overall? No, especially when you look at those top 4, but it's definitely not quite meeting expectations at 5th overall, I would say. Slightly under. You expect more so of a franchise defenseman. He was just a good top pair offense defenseman. Still solid, though. And I don't blame it. Although the Leafs do lack a true number 1, and that maybe is part of the reason they didn't go on deep playoff runs. He always does seem to show up a decent amount in the playoffs. It's more so the forwards that don't show up, so I'm not going to blame him. But yeah, okay pick. not some kind of home run slam dunk when you look at the overall picture. At 6th overall, more kind of the same story with Hampus Lindholm, although he was definitely more of a two-way guy. Fun fact, in his draft year, he was like the biggest riser, considering the fact in his draft year -1, he had 4 points in 39 games at the Swedish juniors level. Then he plays in the second-tier league and really pops off. Ends up going to Anaheim at 6th overall. Spent 1 year in the AHL, then 2 solid seasons at the NHL level. And by his 3rd season, this guy was getting Norris votes. And from 2016 to 2022, he was a very, very good top pair offensive defenseman, sometimes on good Anaheim teams from like 2016 to 2018, and even on bad Anaheim teams. He was a very good top pair, two-way guy around 30 to 45 point pace. Again, not a legit number one. It was kind of number one by committee in Anaheim at that time, but very reliable, top 25 to 40 defensemen in the NHL at that time. I'd say he was slightly better than Morgan Riley and maybe is slightly better than Morgan Riley still. But when looking at it, eventually got traded to the Boston Bruins, had a solid 2022 season. And then in 2023 had by far his best season. Like Morgan Riley, funny enough, finished 5th in Norris voting. That was his highest finish when he had 53 points. He was by far the best defenseman on Boston that season, ahead of Charlie McAvoy. He was an absolute two-way beast. Offense hasn't really been there the last season and a half, 33 points in 90 games, but he's still great defensively. Similarly to Morgan Riley, I'd rate him a little bit higher than Morgan Riley, but never became that true number one that you kind of expect at 6th overall, but still very solid career, very impressive, very good top pair defenseman. At 7th overall, Matt Dumba. Matt Dumba was viewed as a guy, this was the description, with such passion and intensity, it rubs off on teammates. Dumba is a punishing hitter who can deliver crushing blows when an opponent's head is down. And that's what he did early on in Minnesota. He was a wrecking ball out there and actually was pretty solid offensively. He peaked in 2018 with 50 points, and he was looking like one of the best under 25 defensemen in the entire NHL. But then to start the 2018-2019 season, when he was fighting Matthew Tkachuk, he, funny enough, threw a punch and it tore his pectoral. That season, he had 12 goals, 10 assists, 22 points in 32 games, playing 24 minutes a night. He was taking kind of the reins as the number one defenseman ahead of Jared Spurgeon. That injury completely wrecked his career. Missed the rest of that season and was just never the same player again. The next 4 seasons for Minnesota put up 27-point pace, and in his final season, only 14 points in 79 games. Was no longer capable defensively as well. It wasn't just the offense that was affected. Definitely the offense was severely affected. But yeah, his analytics fell off from a low-end number one guy to just a straight-up actively bad guy. Signs in Arizona, bad. Gets traded to Tampa Bay, bad again. Signs a 2-year deal. He's gotten paid the last two years, 2 off seasons, a decent amount. But this season in Dallas, the first year of a 2-year deal, he's playing 15, 33 a night. So overall, we're going back to the bust lands with Derek Pouliot to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They actually got this pick from the Jordan Staal trade, funny enough. I guess Pittsburgh was like, we have enough centers. Jordan Staal, you won 1 cup with us. We got to move on. And eventually, although Pouliot wasn't part of the core that ended up winning any cups, but it ended up maybe being the right cause to move off him. They got the 8th overall pick. This was a little bit of a reach of a pick. So I looked it up. Sportsnet had him at 21st. A lot of guys had him in like the mid to late teens. So he went 8th overall. Puck rushing, puck moving defenseman. Didn't really translate to the NHL. When looking at his draft year +1, draft year +2, didn't take sizable steps to the WHL level. So when he came to the AHL, came to the NHL, didn't really translate. Got some burn in Pittsburgh, played 2 playoff games in the 2016 run, didn't play at all in 2017. Ends up getting traded for an AHLer and a 4th-round pick in the 2017 offseason to Vancouver. They play him 2 seasons, more of the same, just like a bottom pair guy that occasionally shows some offensive flashes. With Pouliot, it was just like whenever he was at all pressured, he folded. He did not make good decisions under pressure from the blue line. He was kind of soft with the puck, soft on the puck, and wasn't good defensively at all. So if you're an offensive defenseman and you kind of fall whenever someone's in your grill, you're not going to translate at the NHL level. And that was definitely Pouliot's problem. And now he's actually in the AHL this season. 20 points in 27 games. Maybe he'll get a call up. Maybe he'll have a late career revival like a Dylan McIlrath, who was 10th overall in 2010. I wouldn't count on it, but anything is possible at this point. He's still playing hockey. He's still getting paid a decent amount to play pro hockey. So good on him. He's had a long career. Good for him. 9th overall, Jacob Trouba to the Winnipeg Jets, one of the most talked about players this season for all the wrong reasons. But yeah, in his draft year, he was viewed as a big physical two-way presence. That's what he was for the Winnipeg Jets for his first 5 years of his career. Played at Michigan for 1 season, then went to the Winnipeg Jets. Right out of the gate, played around like 22 minutes a night, reliable both ways. In 2019, peaked offensively for the Winnipeg Jets when Buffalo only played half the season with 50 points. He was looking like one of the better two-way defensemen, young defensemen in the NHL. Maybe not a true number one anytime soon, but he was looking like he could be that physical number two defenseman that you see on cup-winning teams, kind of like a Ryan McDonough in a sense. But yeah, after 2019, he says, peace out, Winnipeg. I forget if it was his girlfriend, fiance, or wife, I think girlfriend or fiance, but says, I want to go do med school in the United States. And Trouba's like, hell yeah, I want to go play in the United States. Both of them were like, let's get out of Winnipeg. We want to go back stateside. So he ends up getting traded to the New York Rangers for Neil Pionk and assets. Neil Pionk ends up being better in Winnipeg than him in New York. We're going to talk about that. Signs a 7-year deal at $8 million, as well as them getting Artemi Panarin. They say, screw it. The rebuild is over, and Jacob Trouba just kind of flounders as he's assumed to be the legit number one defenseman in New York. First season, 27 points, bad defensively. The defensive metrics massively fall off. On top of the following season, only 12 points in 38 games. Never regains that kind of Winnipeg form that he had, even after they got Adam Fox, and he was a second pair guy instead of being relied on to be that top pair guy. He continued to regress and just became a liability. Even though the Rangers became a playoff team under him, under his captainship, he was a liability. If anything, he held them back come playoff time, and to the point where this summer they tried to move him. He wouldn't waive his no-move clause. This season, things got so bad, and he was playing so bad. He had like 6 points in 24 games, brutal defensively, that they end up saying, we're going to waive you. Waives his no trade clause to the Anaheim Ducks, and now is unfortunately just going to like rot there the next 2 years. There's worse places to rot than Anaheim, California, though. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Definitely was looking like he was trending towards, again, similarly to Lindholm and Riley, being a good top pair guy. But once he left Winnipeg, once he got thrown in that role as a number one, he just wasn't really able to cut it. And it's interesting to think if he stayed in Winnipeg, if him and Josh Morrissey kind of came up together, because Josh Morrissey was like on the ascension. Josh Morrissey became the number one, and he was just relied on to be a reliable number two. Maybe things work out different. Maybe he's better in a less pressure environment, doesn't take as massive as a contract in Winnipeg, takes an 8x6 or something like that instead. We'll never know. But at this point, definitely underwhelming. Not a bust, but definitely underwhelming for 9th overall. And then lastly, we got another bust, Slater Koekkoek. He sounds Finnish, but he is fully Canadian. He was a little bit of an interesting prospect, another guy that was kind of a reach, similarly to a Derek Pouliot. And yeah, he just never developed in the OHL. His offensive production never really developed. He never really, in his draft year, like the thing with him, what I read on him was, okay, very good prospect, but didn't do anything exceptional where you thought that he would really pop at the NHL level. And that's exactly what happened. Over 5 seasons, he would play 85 games at the NHL level for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, what led to Slater Koekkoek not developing at the NHL level, he came out a year after he was done playing saying that he dealt with severe anxiety on top of eating disorders. He wasn't able to like eat basically the day of games because he was so worried and so nervous about the game. So that unfortunately kind of led to him not panning out at the NHL level. Hope he's doing good now based on, I think, what I read. He's figured that out, thankfully, now that he doesn't have the stresses of playing in the NHL. But yeah, hope he's doing well. But unfortunately for the Tampa Bay Lightning, they hit on a lot of picks during the Steve Yzerman era. This was definitely not one of them. So overall, with this draft, 1 through 4, bust city, all-time bad. 5th and 6th overall, Lindholm and Riley. Got close to expectations, maybe slightly met them, but definitely did not exceed. Dumba was on the same trajectory until he got hurt. 8th, Derek Pouliot just did not work out. 9th, Trouba, similar to Dumba, not because of an injury that held him back, but just fell off after 2019. And then Slater Koekkoek, unfortunately, due to his eating disorder and anxiety, never really worked at the NHL level. Now, funny enough, I talked about it last video, or the video of 2019, how I said 11 through 20 is like as good as 1 through 10 in this draft, considering they had Matt Boldy, Cole Caulfield, Thomas Harley. Well, it is without a doubt that the 11 through 20 of this draft is far better than 1 through 10, because we have Forsberg, Grigorenko went to Buffalo, Dallas, Radek Foska, Buffalo, Zegman Gergeson, Ottawa, Cody Ceci, Washington, Tom Wilson, San Jose took Tomas Hertl, Chicago, Teravainen, Tampa Bay, Vasilevsky, and Philadelphia, Scott Laughton. That is a damn good 11 through 20. That might be one of the best 11 through 20s of all time, because you have a Hall of Fame legend in Vasilevsky, a guy in Forsberg that has had like 2 elite, like top 15 seasons in the NHL, on top of being a very good first liner for most of it. Hertl, Teravainen, and Wilson have been good first liners for like 5 to 6 year periods. Laughton, Ceci, Gergeson, and Foska were solid middle of the lineup players. The only guy that kind of busted is Grigorenko, who never really made it to the NHL level. Compare that to the 1 through 10, where you have like 6 straight up busts. Very interesting that 11 through 20, the scouting departments some big whiffs within that top 10, but scouts really popped off 11 through 20. When looking also at this draft, loaded goalie draft. Vasilevsky, clearly 19th overall, all-time legend. Hellebuck, 130th overall, also trying to be one of the all-time greats. Freddie Anderson at 78th overall to the Ducks. He has 298 wins. This guy's just been on very good teams throughout his entire career as the starter. Linus Ullmark, Vezina winner at 163rd overall to the Sabres. Matt Murray, 83rd overall. Korpisalo, 62nd overall to Columbus. And Stolarz, 45th to the Flyers. They could use him nowadays, but he took a while to absolutely pop off at the NHL level. So yeah, it might be the best goalie draft of the 2010s, but in terms of skaters, other skaters, it wasn't that much better outside of that top 20. Slavin at 120th, Got Despair at 78th, Adam Pelech at 65th, Damon Severson at 60th, 86th was Colton Parayko, Brady Shea 28th, Chandler Stevenson 77th, and Mike Matheson 23rd. So yeah, overall for the skate 1 through 10s, without a doubt the worst of the 21st century. Overall for the skater class of this draft, pretty shit. Slavin and Forsberg are pretty easily the top two, the best forward and best defenseman of this draft class. Good players, but not superstars by any stretch. But yeah, this draft was just brutal. Compared to 2019, where I can at least draw some of it up to like COVID losing development, this draft did not really pan out. There's definitely some injury cases, but these 4 teams within the top 4, their rebuilds were massively affected by this. Edmonton, they're in a good place now, but I think if they hit on a guy, if Nail Yakupov hit, they probably would have been contenders by the end of the 2010s. Maybe they don't trade Taylor Hall, and he pops off also in the late 2010s. Columbus, the start of the Rick Nash era did not go very well as a result of Ryan Murray not really panning out, and they're still rebuilding yet again because of it. Montreal, the Carey Price era, although they did have that one cup final run, never got their cup, never really was as consistent as we thought because they didn't have that next forward to kind of get the baton for Max Pacioretty, if that makes sense. And my New York Islanders weren't able to find the number 1 defenseman for John Tavares. He ends up leaving in 2018. We were able to aggregate what we thought we were getting in Griffin Reinhart. We kind of combined with Nick Leddy and Zach Boychuk, but they were never obviously a true number 1. So as a result, the Islanders didn't have a ton of success with Tavares, and he ended up moving on. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this video? What do you think about the 2012 draft? What other video or just like overall topics? I like doing these video essays, although they take me a metric shit ton compared to my normal videos. They're really fun to do, to just dive in on a topic like this. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments. What do you think about it? I'll be seeing you in the next one.